Authorities have hailed these elections as the cleanest elections in Nigeria. That seems to be the recurring term, cleanest. Why would they use that kind of terminology, and what makes these elections credible?
I think to understand and to answer that question, what we first need to bear in mind is where Nigeria is coming from in terms of its electoral process. Previous elections have been characterized by violence, intimidation, fraud, ballot rigging, and just general chaos. I think this election in general has seen a huge migration from that. We've seen logistics improve dramatically. Things have come online and been computerized. We've seen a whole lot more transparency in the process, and that's been reflected in the fact that people are able to cast their votes in a transparent manner without fear of intimidation.
But, you know, even though there's this history of a bit of maladministration, 2007, I think, was watershed with regards to the standard of Nigerian elections. Here we saw numerous electoral disputes that almost lasted 3-4 years. Now that we're seeing the violence in the north, which is obviously over the dispute in the presidential election results, how is the situation going to be handled? Because I don't think Nigerians have 3 years worth of patience in resolving this particular one.
This time there's a lot more clarity in the process. Initially, if there is a dispute, it goes to a court where 21 days there needs to be a formal complaint lodged. Thereafter, a judgment needs to be written down in the next 180 days. And any further contestation of that judgment takes 90 days. So the process is set out quite clearly by the legal system, and that gives a lot more clarity. I think what we've seen in this election, though, and one of the prime reasons why it's a lot more credible than the 2007 elections, is the fact that you've seen a lot of political will. Goodluck Jonathan himself has put his reputation on the line. He's said explicitly that he's going to deliver a credible election. He's appointed an independent, well-respected academic as the head of the Independent Nigerian Electoral Commission. And that's been something that's reflected in the progress and the conduct of the election generally. The other factor is that we've seen 2 postponements. So there's been a definite commitment from the Nigerian authorities to get this right. We've seen that on the 2nd of April, where the process was aborted and postponed until the logistic considerations were sorted out.
Let's talk about the results. We've now had presidential and parliamentary elections, and a fairly decisive victory of over 60% thereabouts for President Jonathan, but not quite within Parliament, where we've seen some key positions being lost, like the Speaker of Parliament. But on the flip side, the PDP gaining traction in the Senate. What's that going to mean for governance in general?
Well, the 2 ways of looking at it. Either you have a legislative bottleneck, or you've got the system in general and the maturity of Nigerian democracy. So what you could see in Parliament now is a lot more diverse views, a lot more consensus-based politics, and a lot more checks and balances, which in the long run will be very, very good for the democratic trends in Nigeria.
So a deepening of democracy possibly in Nigeria. Key legislation that still needs promulgation, reforms around the petroleum industry, setting up finally legislatively the Sovereign Wealth Fund and other such things. So these are very, very critical. Are we likely to see quick movement?
The reforms are critical in unlocking the economic potential of Nigeria. Investors have played very much a wait-and-see game, and now they'll be looking to get some certainty as to what legislation and what policies the government's going to affect. The Sovereign Wealth Fund and the Petroleum Industry Bill have been in the pipeline for a long time. Goodluck Jonathan is quite aware of the ramifications of delaying this legislation, and I think we are going to see some active efforts to try push this through. And this is critical in allowing Nigeria to attract foreign investment, which is so critical in stimulating the economy. Particularly in the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we've seen a huge decline in foreign reserves in Nigeria over the past year, a lot of unaccounted for money, and what we need to see is more transparency in the process so that Nigeria can manage its economic funds and some of the economic benefits in a much more transparent and credible manner.
There's also the question of the Niger Delta, and we know that lots of effort and personal effort taken by the late President Yaradua to get peace and some kind of resolution to the situation in the Niger Delta. President Jonathan had to just give impetus to the process. But nonetheless, there is a sense that the security issues haven't been dealt with completely there, and as a result, Nigeria is not producing oil at optimum level. What more needs to be done, and how is the situation going to be handled? Is there an approach? Is there a plan?
Looking at the situation, Goodluck Jonathan played an instrumental role in brokering the amnesty agreement in the Niger Delta. The other factor to consider is that he comes from the region, he's got a lot of support, and there's a lot of expectation on him to deliver. He understands the dynamics, which is a major plus point. The root cause of many of the issues in the Niger Delta is socioeconomic distress. The youth don't have jobs and hence resort to militant tactics and disrupt oil production. For the past couple of years, it's been relatively stable, and as I've said, Goodluck Jonathan, he understands the dynamics. So the plans are in place, particularly in the gas and oil fields, to attract foreign investment to the tune of $25 billion US, create approximately 600,000 jobs, and if they can address the socio-economic factors,
right,
create jobs, and attract foreign investment, the outlook for the Niger Delta will be quite healthy.
But is that almost an immediate solution or long-term? Because US investors have been watching these elections, particularly because Nigeria is a major supplier of US crude. They provide about 15% of the imports that go into the United States. And there's a sense that in a world where energy security is key, Nigeria needs to step up to the plate.
There's definitely no quick fix solution to the problem. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort to engage with foreign companies, attract the investment, build the infrastructure, and complete the structural overhaul of the economic landscape in the region. What's encouraging, though, well, not encouraging, but what's worth noting is the fact that the majority of the violence in Nigeria has been concentrated in the north, which is away from the oil fields and away from the economic activity. So Nigeria's oil production hasn't been affected in a wholesale manner.
Market's response to these elections, I mean, prior to the elections, we did see a lot of dollar demand as people sort of exiting the market, and there was a fear of capital outflows. Bond yields, though, recently have gone down. The foreign exchange, or rather the exchange rate, doesn't seem particularly volatile. So I'd say the markets have responded positively. What do you say?
Definitely. I mean, investors have been very cautious. They've played a wait-and-see game until the elections. Now you're seeing a big bounce, and that's reflected in the spreads of Nigeria's Eurobond, which has come down to 6.23%. The all-share exchange has been on a 6-day rally at its highest levels since January the 6th. So generally, you're seeing risk sentiment about Nigeria declining, and you're seeing a lot of comfort derived from investors because they've now got clarity as to what's going to happen. You've delivered a credible elections. We've seen credible elections in Nigeria, and prospects are quite healthy going forward.